These are the two books. Now, I think Darwin wrote other things, but this is where he espoused his views in terms of how man came into existence. This was called The Origin of the Species. Subtitle, By Means of Natural Selection. This is what's published today. It's a new book. This was original title. I'll tell you here in a minute. This is a quote from Charles Darwin. This is relating to how man came about and what he believed. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. The break between man and his nearest allies will then be wider, for it will intervene between man and a more civilized state, as we may hope, even than the Caucasian and some ape as low as the baboon, instead of is now between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. Negro, black people, mainly in Africa, they're referring to it. That's how. Australians, that would be the Aborigines. The gorilla, well, that's a gorilla. He's putting them all in the same category. Charles Darwin, after he figured out about evolution, this is in The Descent of Man. This is it right here. In this Descent of Man, he footnotes it quite a bit. But everything in this book, all it talks about is how did man come about. He came from, he by evolutionary processes became man through the primates. And I'd say an ape-like animal, because as, let's see, Jim Laurent and you, Jay, sent me the same link. And I read it. Okay. I know I'm really taken aback a little bit that you might think I thought that man evolved from the apes of today. That is not evolutionary theory, nor do I believe that. No, that's not what I believe. I don't put that as a point of contention. I know it supposedly has a common ancestor to the ape of today. So, Charles Darwin was one of the first open racists. Now, his work in this book here called Origin of Species, basically all he says is that I observed in nature changes to species based on their environment. Okay, that's what he wrote in this book. All microevolution. He then extrapolated that if you get enough of that, you can go from microbes to man. That's what he extrapolated. Called Darwinian evolution says, and that's not, there's no evidence for that in Darwin stuff. It's just his guess. And the Descent of Man, he talks about, he never gives you anything that is evidence of evolution. He just says, well, you know, apes, and he just says a lot of stuff. Apes have, homologous features to man. That means it's common ancestry. And so forth and so on. A lot of stuff like that. And I've read the book, the whole book. But of course, homologous means fingers, legs, same thing as man has. That means they descended from, no, that doesn't mean that. That is a story saying, okay, well, it could be possible that they descended from the same animal. It's not proof of anything. If you believe in God created apes to run around in the jungle and climb trees, and that's how their DNA makes them do it. And they created humans very similar. We don't climb trees like apes do, but we run around the ground and we have the way we live, they live the same way. It's common design. That would be our position. It's just as good an argument as common descent, believe me. Because there's really no evidence of that. I know you all disagree with me. Here we go. His best-selling book was titled On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. That was what he wrote. You ever heard of that? This gentleman says he has heard it. Anybody else knew that that was actually the original? How come it doesn't say it in this book right here? You know why? Darwin's whitewashed, man. Darwin's a great guy. You don't want to say anything like he thought they were favored races. He definitely thought they were favored races. All right. So that was the influence. He was a very famous man. He became famous real quick. Karl Marx. Here's a comment from him. Y'all know who Karl Marx is? Give you a little background on Karl Marx. Karl Marx was a revolutionary. Believed in revolution of the working class to take over the rich people of the time. This actually happened. It's history in Russia. It happened in France. Y'all see the story or the play or the movie Les Miserables? That's the French Revolution. How about Dr. Zhivago? Do you remember Dr. Zhivago? That was a great movie. But that was about the Russian Revolution. And Karl Marx was the guy who wrote and said, we need to kill all the rich people, take all their stuff. And he is actually the father of communism. But he's famous. And yes, he made a big difference in the world. Okay? Moving on. He was a fan of Darwin. They actually had a mutual admiration society. They would write back and forth how great this your book is, how great he's contemporary of Darwin. And they really liked each other's writings.
Jerry, read the. Did you read that?
Yes. Read what?
The quote.
Quote.
Darwin's work is most important and suits my purpose in that it provides a basis in natural science for the historical class struggle. Yes.
And do you think that indicates Karl Marx came to his conclusions and his beliefs because of Darwin's work, or he came to his conclusions and beliefs independent of Darwin's work and happened to find and say, oh, you know, Darwin's work supports me?
I think exactly what you just said is true.
So we
He
can't
was influenced.
So
He was
therefore
also
we can't
influenced
blame
by-
Darwin or the theory
Okay.
of evolution
This
as
is
what
one
caused
quote.
Karl Marx.
This is one quote. If you want to Google the relationship between Karl Marx and Darwin, you can find it. It's a lot more than what you just said. Okay, they commiserated on and they cooperated in coming up with different ideas and such, and they were all linked together. And
Well, I think
what Karl Marx was saying was basically survival of the fittest. We can organize a group of people, and there's a lot more of us, and we can take their stuff because we're stronger, bigger, and more of us. That's what happened.
Well, what
And I'm not saying it was right or wrong whether Karl Marx, the Russian Revolution, French Revolution. I'm not making moral judgments on that. I'm just saying that was his teachings, and he's supported by Darwin's work.
But you picked some of the top evil men of the last century or two, and you're at least implying that evolution and their belief in Darwin's work played a role in that. But
It more than played a
the way
role.
to
It
refute
was a
that-
dominating
the way
influence
to
on all
ref-
these people.
Yeah, but certainly Genghis Khan and all the evil men from the previous millennia
Not
were
relevant.
influenced by Darwin on evolution.
Not relevant.
They didn't need it.
Not
So-
relevant to the
and
discussion.
Hitler would have been Hitler whether Darwin ever existed or not.
You don't know that, do you?
Well, I think that's highly
I-
likely.
you think. I'm glad that you think. I'm glad you have the
that's-
ability.
I think that's likely. I certainly can't prove it. But I
Oh,
certainly can
I'm
say
making
that
a very
Genghis
simple-
Khan was
I'm making
Genghis
a very
Khan
simple
regardless
point,
of
Bill.
Darwin.
Bill, I'm making a very simple point. This presentation has nothing to do with whether evolution is true or not. Okay? Not even arguing in this group. I'm showing you what Darwin's work, okay, the idea and the belief in evolution, where it leads.
No, yeah, you're saying it caused. It was the
I didn't say it was
this.
that
This was
only
the
caused.
effect. This was the effect that led. You're saying, you said that evolution, that his theory of evolution led to this. And I'm saying
I'm
no.
saying to you, you don't understand the relationship between Karl Marx and Darwin and how more involved it was in this statement. Okay? This is just a statement I pulled out of a quote that Karl Marx made. I read also about all the letters that went back and forth between them and how they cooperated on how they present their cases, because it's all based on the same idea. Okay? human life is not any more valuable than anything else. So if we get a bigger force, we're gonna take over the other guys that are against us. And that's what he believed.
So I could pick the mother who drowns her 3 little children so that they're guaranteed to go to heaven, rather than risk letting them grow up and commit sins and be a
Hey,
non-believer and go to
you know
hell.
what, I tell you what I didn't mention in the front, okay? Okay. What I'm presenting here has to do with atheism and evolution, if you are an atheist or an evolutionist. I believe in that. Just like I wouldn't apply that to you, just like you shouldn't apply the Inquisition and the Crusades against Christianity.
No,
Because trust me, that wasn't Christianity. And that woman drowning her children wasn't Christianity. She
And
was a
we're saying that
deranged
this was
woman.
not the teaching of Darwin. And that's
Excuse
what
me?
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, that Karl Marx and Hitler and Stalin, all, they did things that were not in conformance with what Darwin would have wanted or felt was appropriate and consistent with evolution.
Do you
All I'm
understand
saying
Darwin's
is-
teaching was that weaker people have to be eliminated? And that's exactly what Karl Marx was saying. We're stronger, they're weaker. Let's get rid of them.
I don't think Darwin ever said weaker people have to be eliminated.
Wow.
He should
You
make that
need-
decision.
you need-
He said that they are.
You need to read Origin of the Species or Descent of Man. He's saying, no, he said, no, they need to be taken out. He's not saying you should eliminate, he says you should eliminate the black people.